This is Land of Havilah, 1 Samuel 30. The Philistines told David and his men to leave the battlefield and go back to Philistine country. They'll have to march about 100 miles south to get back to their families in Ziklag. Verse 1. When David and his men had come to Ziklag on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid on the south and on Ziklag, and had struck Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and all who were in it, both small and great. They didn't kill any, but carried them off and went their way. When David and his men came to the city, behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters were taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. David's 2 wives were taken captive, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the souls of all the people were grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. Comment: It's the Amalekites, the desert-dwelling people that live in the desert south. They raided Ziklag, plus, as we'll find out in a minute, they also raided the part of Israel that borders the desert south, the area called the Negev. It was a fine time to attack because the armies of Israel and of the Philistines were 100 miles north preparing to fight each other. The raiders took everything, including the wives and children of David's men. They didn't kill any, but just took them off and went their way. In life, there always seem to be people in the crowd that are happy to blame the leaders for every bad thing that occurs, and some of David's men are blaming him to the point that they want to stone him. So that's a very unjust thing, to blame our leaders for things that are beyond their control. But coming up, what's the first thing David did in the face of disaster? Still in verse 6. But David strengthened himself in Yahweh his God. Comment: That was a big-time act of faith. His men spoke of stoning him, and he's lost his 2 wives himself, but he strengthened himself in Yahweh his God. Psalm 31:24, quote, Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who hope in Yahweh. And Psalm 50:15, quote, Call on me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you will honor me. Verse 7. David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, Please bring the ephod here to me. Abiathar brought the ephod to David. Comment: According to the law of Moses, leaders of Israel should consult Yahweh through the priest before they commit to battle. The priest will inquire with the Urim, which is an object stored in the ephod, Numbers 27:21 and Exodus 28:30. Verse 8, David inquired of Yahweh, saying, If I pursue after this troop, will I overtake them? He answered him, Pursue, for you will surely overtake them and will without fail recover all. Comment: Yahweh says, Pursue and you will recover all. So this will be a great lesson in total loss and in total recovery. Because David didn't despair, he strengthened himself in the Lord and sought guidance from the Lord. Verse 9. So David went, he and the 600 men who were with him, and came to the brook Bezor, where those who were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, who were so faint they couldn't go over the brook Bezor. Comment: David's total number of men is still about 600. All of them were fit enough to travel over 100 miles in 3 days to get back to Ziklag, but now they've picked up the pace in pursuit, and 200 of them can't keep up. Only 400 are going on. Verse 11. They found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he ate, and they gave him water to drink. They gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. When he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread and drank no water for 3 days and 3 nights. Comment: They found a young Egyptian in the desert who was near death. He was too weak to even talk, but he perked up with some food and water. Maybe he knows something. Verse 13. David asked him, To whom do you belong? Where are you from? He said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me because 3 days ago I got sick. We made a raid on the south of the Cherethites and on that which belongs to Judah and on the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. Comment: Yahweh has provided a perfect informant. It was the Amalekites, and they raided the Negev, including the Cherethites, who aren't Israelites but some other ethnic group, and they raided Judah and the south of Caleb, which are Israelite people near the southern desert, and Ziklag. This young man was with the raiders, but on the way home, they left him in the desert because he fell sick. That's why he's had no food or water for 3 days, as it said in verse 12. Verse 15, David said to him, "Will you bring me down to this troop?" He said, "Swear to me by God that you will not kill me and not deliver me up into the hands of my master, and I will bring you down to this troop." Comment: That was the last we'll hear from this young Egyptian. There's no more mention of him except in the coming verse that he did indeed lead David to the Amalekite home base. Verse 16. When he had brought him down, behold, they were spread around all over the ground, eating, drinking, and dancing because of all the great plunder that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. Comment: They think they've made their getaway, and it's party time. Verse 17. David struck them from the twilight even to the evening of the next day. Not a man of them escaped from there, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken, and David rescued his 2 wives. There was nothing lacking to them, neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither plunder nor anything that they had taken to them. David brought back all. David took all the flocks and the herds which they drove before those other livestock and said, "This is David's plunder." Comment: The plunder wasn't just from Ziklag by any means. It was a very great amount of plunder from a large area of Judah, Simeon, and the Cherethites. David's group recovered all of it with the people and started back home. Of course, David's giving his men some of the livestock, but he also took claim of some of the livestock personally and put his out front, saying, "This is David's plunder." Verse 21. David came to the 200 men who were so faint that they could not follow David, whom also they had made to stay at the brook Bezor, and they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. When David came near to the people, he greeted them. Then all the wicked men and worthless fellows of those who went with David answered and said, "Because they didn't go with us, we will not give them anything of the plunder that we have recovered, except to every man his wife and his children, that he may lead them away and depart." Comment: Clearly David has to deal with a lot of wicked and worthless fellows within his own group. When they lost everything, some of them talked of stoning David, but now that they've gotten all their people and property back, plus much more, they can't be happy with that. They want to keep the property of their brothers who are too faint to keep up the pace, and they want to break company with them to tell them to depart. Verse 23. Then David said, "Do not do so, my brothers, with that which Yahweh has given to us, who has preserved us and delivered the troop that came against us into our hand. Who will listen to you in this matter? For as his share is who goes down to the battle, so shall his share be who stays with the baggage. They shall share alike." Comment: David says you won't get very far with that argument. Give them their people plus an equal share of the plunder. Verse 25. It was so from that day forward that he made a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. Comment: The soldiers who stayed with the baggage got an equal share of plunder from that day on. Verse 26. When David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah, even to his friends, saying, "Behold, a present for you from the plunder of Yahweh's enemies." Comment: David spent years in Judah running from Saul, and he had friends in Judah that supported him during that time, he and his army. So now he's sending them these gifts. Verse 27. He sent it to those who were in Bethel, to those who were in Ramoth of the south, to those who were in Jattir, to those who were in Auror, to those who were in Siphmoth, to those who were in Eshtemoa, to those who were in Rakal, to those who were in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, to those who were in the cities of the Kenites, to those who were in Hormah, to those who were in Borashan, to those who were in Athach, to those who were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men used to stay. Comment: We can see the smiling faces when David's men roll up on those homes in Judah with that livestock and say, "Here, this is a gift from David." 1 Samuel 31 is next at landofhavilah.net, 1 Samuel 31. This is the map of 1 Samuel 30. The Dead Sea's 10 miles across. David and his men were up north in the valley of Jezreel, but the Philistines sent him back to Ziklag. It took 3 days to make the trip of over 100 miles. They found Ziklag in ruins, burned, and all their people missing. They started the chase southward and left 200 of the men at the brook Bezor, which is still there by the same name. They caught up with the Amalekites somewhere in the desert. Afterward, David sent presents to over 14 places in Judah. The ones we can still locate are Eshtemoa, Hebron, and the cities of the Kenites somewhere in the neighborhood of Arad. 1 Samuel 31 is next.